And just jumping forward to this incredible story, really a history of you, Joel. You go on to open for and play with Joan Baez, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Sheryl Crow. Just briefly, what is so special about each one of these individuals?
Well, initially, what was special for me was because just previous to that, I was in a duo playing around San Diego County with a girl named Rosie Flores. I don't know if any of you have heard of her before, but she's kind of a rockabilly singer now, fairly well known. But we had a duo, and Rosie lived in San Diego County also, and she decided at a certain point that she was going to move to LA and try to get a record deal. It was about 1978. And I couldn't do that because I had two small children. I had a day job, and I had my night job playing music with her. But once she left, I was on my own. And so it was kind of I don't know, it was sort of providential, because we had a fan, Rosie and I did, that was the music editor of the local newspaper. And he would come to see us all the time. Well, after Rosie moved to Los Angeles, Rick Danko was coming through town with his new band, because the band had just broken up like the previous year, and Rick Danko had formed his own band and was touring the country. So this guy called me up and he said, "Hey, Rick Danko is coming to Encinitas to the La Paloma Theater and doesn't have an opening act. You should go talk to these guys." So I went and talked to the promoter, and I was able to procure the opening act spot. I got a good mention in a review. I parlayed that to two more opening acts for two more national acts that were coming through San Diego, Jesse Colin Young and John Lee Hooker. The Jesse Colin Young show went great, you know. And then I thought, well, I'll just do the same thing at the John Lee Hooker show. Well, John Lee Hooker's audience was looking for something a little different than what I had to offer. So that show wasn't so successful. But I mean, even so, what a thrill to be able to play two shows with John Lee Hooker, you know. But I thought, okay, this is a niche that hasn't been opened up yet, you know. There's like 5 promoters in town that promote in various venues that bring national acts into town. And so I just started building relationships with those people, because I really didn't want to play in bars. I didn't want to play fashion shows. You know, I wanted to play in bigger venues. That's always been my goal. Still my goal. Bigger venues, please. But anyways, so I carved out a niche in San Diego County. I had a day job. I was raising my family with my wife. And I carved out a niche getting these opening acts for national touring acts. Joan Baez was later, but you know, in the early acts, I opened for Jesse Colin Young, who I was able to cultivate a relationship with. He actually got to do some shows out of my town with him. Rick Danko and I became good friends. I was able to cultivate relationships with some of these people, and I think what they did is because I had respect for them and what they had accomplished, and they showed that respect back to me, that gave me kind of the fuel I needed to continue on. Because, you know, there was no other real success in my career that I could quantify.
And what do you think of Joan Baez, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Sheryl Crow? These shows that you start opening up nationally. Well, what was your experience? What did you think of them? They're just, each one is very different and interesting and extraordinary.
I've been very lucky because the people that I did find to open up back in those days, the shows for, were for the most part people that I had a lot of respect for. I mean, you know, I could have gotten tried to open a show for Kiss, you know, but it wouldn't have really made much sense, you know. And I think after the John Lee Hooker show, which, don't get me wrong, because I love John Lee Hooker, but he had a hardcore blues audience, and they were not interested in anything I was doing, you know. And I learned a lesson from that, you know. I learned, like, well, okay, if an act's coming into town and they're not kind of in my world, then it's a waste of time to go for that one, you know, because I'm going to get up there and it's just going to be like sort of potential to fail. Whereas if I could be paired with an act that was more in the musical world that I lived in, even the social issue world that I lived in, that I could be received better. And so I made a point of trying to open for acts that I had respect for. You know, and I was really fortunate in that way. Some of the people I would have a chance to get to meet and get to know, and others it was just sort of a hello and a goodbye on the way in and out, you know. But yeah, I have tremendous respect for almost every artist that I've ever worked with. I've been pretty fortunate to not have to work with any artists that, you know, that were offensive to me in some way. So I've been very fortunate.